GAYSA Radio, where you are family.
On GAYSA Radio Chats, we're heading to Australia to speak with David Rector, the writer and director of the exciting new audio play, Friends of Dorothy, set in the vibrant 1980s. This fantastic series premieres on GAYSA Radio this February, airing Thursdays at 10 a.m. with a repeat at 9 p.m. Join us as we dive into the creative process behind the show, meet the incredible cast, and hear all about the fun and energy that went into bringing this amazing project to life.
Podcast called Friends of Dorothy, am I correct?
You are, I did.
David, could you tell us more about the inspiration behind the Friends of Dorothy, and how did your personal experience shape the series?
Thank you. The idea came to me about 10, 12 years ago. I actually wanted to make it a documentary, and I'm not a documentarian, so that fell away. I've been interested in, I guess, what it's been like to be queer across the decades. So, I was friends with an 85-year-old when I was 30 or 40, and so that, I think, being friends with someone that much older made me think about what he'd been through. And just in my life travels and work travels, I've come across, queer folk of all ages. And so it just got me thinking, wouldn't it be interesting to do something that looks at what it's like to be gay at another time? Friends of Dorothy was a term that I heard when I first came out. I was at a dinner party with a bunch of gay guys, and people were saying, "Is so-and-so a friend of Dorothy?" And I turned to the next person and say, "Who the hell is Dorothy?" They said, no, that's the term. It was code for gay. And I thought, how quaint, how cute. And it stayed with me, I guess, as a term, but it's symbolic, I reckon, of the fact that a lot of queer folk have had to, maybe some still have to, live in secret speaking code. So that's the sort of the marriage of my interest to tell stories or to hear stories. I just decided to write my own. I wrote from my own experience and created this sitcom rather than do a documentary or write a feature film. I thought, have a bit of fun. Queer people have lots of spirit, lots of fun. I had a lot of fun when I was 20, which is when I'm writing about. So I'm writing about my life from 40 years ago, and I've apportioned it to 4 or 5 different characters.
The ensemble cast is wonderfully lively and talented. How did you go about casting Declan Clifford, Tessa Nielsen, River Stevens, Riley Nottingham, Martin and Johanna Halliday? What stood out about each of these roles?
Wow, that's a big question, Olivia. Let's see. Well, okay, so I did a very broad casting call on an online app for young actors, young musos, young performers, and I got 200 responses. It was just ridiculous. And although it was post-COVID, we were still in a time when it was like, well, I'm not really going to be able to do it in my home city. So I stupidly ticked the boxes that said every city in Australia. So sure enough, I got people from every city in Australia. So I whittled down. There were people that were clearly just not right. I had an idea of who I wanted or what I thought I wanted. So with Declan, he's amazing. He's just a wonderful actor. He applied for the role of Simon, not Mikey, and I thought, no, you're not a Simon. And so with him, I kind of met, as I did with all of them, I met a couple of times on Zoom and got a feel for them. Didn't ask them to audition, really. I don't recall having asked any of them to audition for me. I think that's a bit sort of demeaning. So I just thought either I get a feel for who you are, ask them what they thought of the script. He just felt like a Mikey. For me, much better looking, though, than any Mikey that I would have imagined. In fact, I imagined Mikey to be slightly chubby, whereas Declan's just like a perfect looking man. So I had to do some tweaking of the script because there were a couple of chubby references in there, so I took those out. And with Tessa, she just was obvious, strangely, to me. Her audition scenes on her profile online were from a show, I'm not sure whether you've had it here, Wentworth, which is a prison drama, which it sort of has travelled a lot around the world. It's pretty heavy stuff.
I think we have seen it.
It's set in a women's prison in Melbourne, Australia, and she decided to do a scene from it with another actor friend. She wasn't in the series. She just decided to reenact it. She was so good in it, and there's a lesbian kiss, and I just got a whole lot of intensity from her, and I thought, oh, I like you. And I never put the two of them together. I never actually got the two of them online together. So I cast the two leads separately, and they've got great chemistry, so I'm just very lucky man. So too with River, who plays Simon. He did a scene from a queer film, My Own Private Idaho, which was a famous 90s queer film with Keanu Reeves and River Phoenix. And it was heartbreaking. And I just thought, you're beautiful, you're fragile, you're everything that I want. But it was very serious. So when I met him, I wanted to make sure he had lots of spirit. He was just perfect. Martine Halliday is a triple threat. She sings, she acts, she performs and writes. She's played musicals. She's a teacher. I wasn't going to cast her. She made it to my last three. I had 3 Vivs. And all her scenes online were really dramatic, very serious. And I thought, this is a comedy. But when I met her, she just beams, as you'll hear when you hear her performance. She's like a cyclonic breath of fresh air that sweeps into the episode. So I cast her. Who have I left out? Yes, so the 2 of the original cast I've recast. So there's been a little bit of shuffling. Riley Nottingham is a very experienced actor. He's probably the most experienced actor in my group. Came on board last. He was a child actor. He's great. He does improv, he does stand-up, he does movies, he does TV. I'm so thankful to have him in my ensemble. He's William the bisexual. And then finally, Joanna Halliday's the storyteller, and that was a new character because I didn't want to be the narrator. And that's a long answer to a really good short question. I hope that answers that question.
The show is set in 1984, a time of immense change for the LGBTQ plus community. How did you approach recreating cultural and social atmosphere of that era in the series?
Yeah, look, I think it's more a backdrop, really. There's a bit of a legal, social and cultural status of queer folk in Australia that I'm writing to, but I'm not making it front and centre. It is very much a sitcom with bits of social commentary, harassment, vilification, judgment, shame, rejection from family and friends. That stuff gets referenced, but yeah, not so much front of centre, but front of mind. But really, the thing about people searching for their own kind is something that's really at the forefront of the show, bringing the unlikeliest of folks together, that's what my experience was when I first came out in the early 1980s in Australia. We were a really fragmented queer community, but we came together. We came together for legal reasons, for health reasons, because of AIDS. So I guess my thesis, that's a wanky term, but my thesis for the show is we don't really have anything in common per se with each other, queer folk, other than we're either different or feel different or are perceived as different or are treated as different. But the queer community, when it had to, it did come together. So that was my underlying approach here. Season 2, which I'm already well into writing-wise and we've already started production on, brings out more of the political and social and the health changes. Yeah.
With influences like the Golden Girls, the Two Ronnies, and camp icons such as Streisand and Midler, how did you balance nostalgia with modern human sensibilities?
Great question again. I'm not sure I did, really. I'm trying to. I hope that humour can traverse time and place and history, but we'll see. And I really hope that my humour travels to South Africa. I'm hoping that younger audiences anywhere, everywhere, will look up some of the references that I make, whether they're terms, songs, actors, movies, that they don't know. But I think that well-worn tropes, well-worn sitcom ideas like mistaken identity, talking at cross purposes, witty banter, I hope it's witty banter, I just hope is timeless. There's a sense of the playful and the silly. I'm very keen to bring back silly and playful. There's too little of that in comedy at the moment, I reckon. Streaming services are just like, they're so serious, the comedies there, they don't look and sound like comedies, they're called comedies, they don't resemble it. So I'm looking to hark back to a lighter, carefree days of old, and that's how I'm trying to mix the nostalgia with what I hope is still, modern sensibilities, that people like to have a laugh, people like to have a chuckle.
Queertopia is such a fun and unique concept. What message or themes do you hope viewers take away from the housemates' mission to create a safe and inclusive space?
Yeah, another terrific question. For me, it's really important to have aspiration, and that's the Steph character. She spearheads aspiration. It's about the queertopia, the safe haven, the inner sanctum, protecting it from the outside world, and that's they talk a lot about that. Mikey is more about unadulterated fun and silliness, whimsy. We seem to have lost that, I think, from our culture and from comedy. So Queertopia, I think, is about maintaining and restoring queerness, queer culture, queer expressions. I've really watched that change over the decades. And I think that speaks to audiences now, that it doesn't matter really what decade you've lived in and come out in. It's still sometimes precarious to be queer, to be gay, to be lesbian, to be trans, particularly in countries where there are laws that are, highly restrictive or, punitive. So I think if people can put their differences to one side, and I'm talking about queer folk, can put their differences to one side, they can find solidarity and create this safe space for each other. And that's a message that I would really like people to happen to hold for each other now, because I think it's really easy to lose sight of that and to be very disposable with all our friendships and our hookups and all our, transactions. So I'm looking for hope, I guess. I had some safe spaces when I came out. They were a necessity, not a luxury. Now we're very much into safe spaces in workplaces and all that stuff, and that's really important. But I think we need them in every realm. Yep.
You mentioned that the series resonates in today's age of cancel culture, gender politics, and social media saturation. How does Friends of Dorothy address these contemporary issues while staying true to its 1980s setting?
Yeah, well, I know that Mikey could never get away with most of the things he says now, which is one of my subversive reasons for writing this show and sharing it. Steph is the voice of reason and political correctness, if you like. So I balance it by shining a light on where that line might be, and it's often an invisible line. That said, I'm really proud, though, as a gay man. I'm proud of our queer spirit, our resilience, our humour, particularly the drag culture. You know, I think it's really important to maintain the rage, maintain our sense of pride. I mean, those words I know are very sort of cliched. There's a reason. You know, I think the house in Friends of Dorothy is a microcosm of broader society, whether it's the gay world or the straight world. Sometimes we do need another person to say, no, that's not okay. That's not okay. For me, being gay was not just a word, and it's funny that the word gay often means happy, because I met and meet a lot of very colourful and spirited queer folk. So, yeah, I think cancel culture is something that's very much on my mind. I've been at the effect of it, and it was part of why I chose to set this 40 years ago, because we got away with murder. That's not the right term. We got away with a lot 40 years ago, 30 years ago that we can't get away with now. And I'm sad about that, but I'm showing it here from both sides. So if Mikey says something really dumb and really offensive, Steph will go, I'm not sure about that. And I think that's important, that people can go, what's wrong with that? Why is she being uptight? That's part of the tension that I want audiences to go, no, that's fine, or no, that's too far.
The voice of the storyteller, played by Joanna Halliday, adds an intriguing element to the series. Can you share how the storytelling format enhances the narrative?
I hope it does. I hope it does. I actually started the construct of it being a podcast within a podcast, and that the idea was that I had a contemporary fake interviewer. Well, it was fake to me, but there was an interviewer who was asking questions of one of the housemates 40 years on, and so everything else was a flashback. That voice was disguised, only to be revealed at the end of the series. But as we were several episodes into it, it was clunky and it didn't really work and wasn't funny. And it distracted from the characters in the house, some feedback I was getting from some people. So I just enhanced the big print, as we call it, which is the so-and-so enters the house, takes off their shoes, blah, blah, blah. I just enhanced all of that stuff, all the informative stuff, and turned it into a storyteller. And so she has a little bit of attitude, has a little bit of colour in her voice. And I got an actor who's very, very adept at finding nuance with what is basically just information. You know, Steph rolls her eyes and throws a cushion at Mikey. She does so with a certain tone that you can almost picture it. So the storyteller is what the word says, I guess, is a guide. And that's how I'm hoping she's enhancing the narrative. Otherwise, it's boring to hear me say Mikey enters the room. Yeah.
Comedy and infotainment are the heart of the show, but it also carries advocacy and a deeper message for the LGBTQ plus community. How did you find the balance between humor and serious themes?
I hope, I'm still finding it. I still am. It's really a tricky mix. I feel like I'm juggling tonally all the time, and I often say to the actors, gee, I'm really sorry, I've had you do a tonal change twice within one speech, where something will be serious and then I'll make a joke of it, or the other way around. My belief is that all good comedy, I hope my comedy is good, but all good comedy has elements of drama. And likewise, I think the best dramas have moments of levity. So it's an ongoing, juggle. But one of the actors who's no longer with the show, but not for this reason, he labelled Friends of Dorothy as a dramedy. And I was struggling with that at first. No, it's a sitcom, excuse me. It's a comedy, it's not a dramedy. But he was right. it does have some deeper and more serious themes in and around the humour. Again, I'm so inspired by the Golden Girls, back to your earlier question, because that had such underpinnings of drama. They covered things like euthanasia and grief and loss, menopause, incapacitation, incontinence, impotence. Four old broads were talking about impotence and incontinence. And they had fun with that. And this was 40 years ago, and I learned pretty much what I know as a writer, probably stolen a bit from the Golden Girls, because there's a desire in all my characters, as there was in the Golden Girls, for those women to be friends, to look after each other, to take care of each other. That endeared me most emphatically to that show, and probably was the point back for me in aspiration for a queertopia. I don't know whether it exists. You'll have to listen to the series and work out for yourself whether such a thing exists, but it's an aim. And, the Golden Girls would often reflect that they had each other, that they were there for one another with all their, differences. So too, I think the Friends of Dorothy have each other, for better or worse. And I have definitely stolen some of those ideas and ideals from other shows.
Recording in a Melbourne studio must have been an exciting process. Could you share any memorable behind-the-scene moments or challenges during the production?
Every step has been steep and exciting in equal measure. None of the actors had done any major voice work. Martine had done some community radio plays and performance in her youth. This is a fully scripted radio play type production. There's no improv. I told them in our first rehearsals before we went into the studio, word perfect. I told them. A couple of them wriggled, and I have loosened that a bit, but we play and we try things. For me, when I go into the studio from the control room and I open that door, it's been sometimes, it's not just the energy and the heat of 5 bods in one room, but there's a vibrational buzz, which is unique to this type of production. If you can imagine, as it was, radio plays with people standing around a mic, in this case 5 microphones. There's something very unique about this way of working, unlike single camera film or TV or multi-camera production like The Big Bang Theory or Friends or any of those. So watching them in their own unique way, the way they use their bodies, because I don't care about their look in there, how they utilize their bodies, their faces, how they contort themselves to get the dialogue out, to get the performance that I want from them. That's amazing for me to watch as a director. I can't see them all through glass. I can only see perhaps one of them through the glass in the other room. So when I walk into the room, there's just this incredible energy. And spoiler, I do some voiceovers too. I do some voice acting in it. So I go in to the booth and I work with the actors, and I'm not an actor, and so it's a wonderful experience to be around them. But it was very steep. Storytelling using voice only, no pictures. I've come from the world of TV, is very steep, but fun.
Finally, you've actually answered a bit of this question before, but with Friends of Dorothy nearly complete, what's next for you? Are there plans for future seasons or other projects that continue to explore the LGBTQ plus stories and themes?
Well, season 1 is complete, but for fans of the show, or would-be fans of the show, if you're about to discover Friends of Dorothy on your wonderful station, then season 2 is already underway. In fact, next week, we are back in the studio for 3 more episodes. The second season, I'm really excited to hear performed, because like any show, it does take a few eps for it to develop, the characters to get established. The situations are more expansive in the second season. I mean, I do some pretty out there stuff in the first season. I even take some of the action out of the house. Each character has a personal... Start that again. I'll do it for a third time. each character has a personal journey to undertake. So the beauty of a 12-part series is that I can plot what they're doing and where they're going and how long it's taking for them to do it. So I've got some really fun stuff to come. I still want to tell queer stories. I don't know what else I'll do after this. This will come to an end, as everything should. But I absolutely want to highlight the courage that queer folk have. If nothing else, if your audiences take nothing else from this show, I really hope they realize their own courage and can look to their own experience and their own coming out. And hopefully these young characters, because they're all pretty young other than the neighbour, they're all going through the rite of passage that we all go through at some point, however old or young. So I'm not really answering your question, but I guess as a wrap up, we are a courageous, resilient, spirited, motley bunch of people. That's the only thing that we have in common, and that's massive. So I really hope that audiences really connect with Friends of Dorothy.
David, we just want to say thank you so much for your time. We will definitely start airing it very, very soon on our station, and we can't wait, as we are already excited. I've listened to one or two of them and it was absolute load of fun. So yet again, thank you so much for you to come on here and tell us more about the whole podcast called Friends of Dorothy.
Livio, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, but thank you for those brilliant questions. It gave me, as you can see, a chance to wax lyrical about it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.